Welcome to Flight 25. I'm out here at Sylmar loading my glider onto the shuttle. After packing up, we drive about 30 minutes to the top of Kagel Mountain. At the summit, I'm greeted by a breathtaking view and, more importantly, the largest gathering of hang gliders I've ever seen preparing to launch. This crowd is so big, I can't launch from the usual spot. Instead, I'll have to try something new and take off from a slightly lower point called the saddle. With so many pilots in the air, thermaling will definitely be tricky today. While setting up and preparing to launch, I can't stop thinking about how I only need 30 minutes of airtime to qualify for my H3 rating. Eager to beat this crowd and get into the air, I decided to launch early instead of waiting to watch others take off. I should have pulled in a little bit more there. I got a little bit, too out, but the air was really picking up, so it worked out fine. But if I do this out of launch again, I just really got to remember to pull in there, get nice and tucked with the glider, because I kind of went up and it wasn't perfect, it wasn't good, but it worked. It was a good takeoff. Didn't have a wingdip like last time, so I'm really glad that I got that figured out. Just getting everything zipped up here and locking in for a nice flight.
All right, good launch.
So back to what I was saying, just absolutely wild how many gliders were up here. It was crazy. The van was full. We got the van full of gliders. I've never seen that in my life. Absolutely wild.
Man, fantastic.
I get up to the top, there's multiple rides of people up there that had full cars with hang gliders. Usually we only see paragliders in these types of numbers. So for me, that was just eye-opening. I was like, wow, this sport isn't dying. And I didn't think it was dying, but I was just like, okay, I've met a handful of people my age. Everyone else is, pretty much retired. No offense, super nice people. But, it's cool to see some younger people out doing this, knowing that this sport will live on through my entire life. Because let's be real, these guys that are retired aren't going to be around in 40 years. And if they're around, they're not probably hang gliding at 100. And it was just cool to see it completely packed. I couldn't even launch from my normal spot, it was so full. That being said, created some interesting new situations in this flight. This is the most people hang gliding I've ever even seen in the air. And so a ton of this flight was just looking around like I'm in a freaking dogfight, figuring out where everybody is. So right off the bat here, already turning with other hang gliders. And so you see me, I'm turning, looking, and this is very stressful for me, a novice thermal pilot. So the glider above is the one that has to yield to the glider below for a few reasons. Main one being the glider below cannot see the glider above in most cases because they have their own glider directly above them blocking vision. So anytime anyone is at all underneath me, I'm on extremely high alert of, okay, I have to yield to them. I have to be ready for them to get a massive amount of lift and just be right in my face, which happened a decent amount just because the air was really, really buoyant and turbulent on this particular flight. And so, there was times where I was just rocketing up, and it was kind of terrifying being the guy below, from my perspective, being the guy below, rocketing up, and then I'm just sweating it okay, is somebody above me that I gotta worry about? And so I gotta worry about, the people above me as well, because I'm sure that they want to be on top of it and yield, but the reality is the air is just going up so much. There's 10 plus gliders in the air in this relatively small bridge that we're working. And so just being on high alert, trying to be courteous of everyone around me and making sure that I'm putting myself in as safe a position as possible so there's no air-to-air collision possibilities. Again, as we've seen in the last few flights, this one is long enough. I don't think you want to see the whole hour undoctored. If you do, drop a comment. I would love to post it if people are interested. But I don't think an hour video is what people want to see. So I'm going to skip ahead and just drop in comments from different times about different things that I see watching this back and things that I thought of during the flight that I just kind of wanted to share. So keep an eye on the time in the bottom left of your screen. That is the actual real time of the flight. And you can kind of use that to see how much I've skipped and where I'm at in the total runtime of the flight. Fortunately, I had the camera recording for landing this time finally. Not the 360 camera, but the GoPro. So we get to see a Sylmar landing recorded. This one was pretty solid. You got to stick around to the end to see how it went. Again, love that dancing analogy here. So I got this other glider. We're, shooting around each other. And it's definitely this harmonious thing. Ideally harmonious. But it's definitely this team effort. There's you can't just come out here and fly with 10 plus other people in the air and just do your own thing. So we see there's 3 gliders right here working the same little patch of air. that is a lot going on for a guy like me. You know, I'm only 25 flights into this, which sounds like a lot saying it now, but it's really not a lot compared to some of these pilots, you know, are flying hundreds of flights a year and have thousands of flights in their lifetime. Some probably tens of thousands of flights. And so, you know, I'm just at the very beginning here, and they've gotten used to flying around other gliders and stuff, I'm sure, but I'm not. And so for me, it's like, part of it's just like a pucker factor, a nerve factor of like, okay, like it feels new, it feels weird. I don't feel comfortable flying around these other hang gliders, so I'm a little bit nervous because of that. And then I don't know how people are going to react in certain situations, etc. And I'm probably reacting differently than they expect me to, so I'm self-conscious and aware of that in the moment, and that kind of puts me on edge as well. And so yeah, just a lot I'm thinking about here, a lot of, you know, head, neck getting sore because I'm looking around so much, just trying to be super hyper vigilant to a point where it's like, you know, it's kind of stressful, but at the same time, you know, I'm still having a blast. Like, just working this thing, it's like a project. It's like a challenging, like, little puzzle, trying to find these pockets of lift and just staying aloft as much as possible.
Heck yeah.
So this is an interesting one here. I'm just cruising along the ridge for a while, and I see a couple other gliders circling. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, do I want to stay on this ridge where I'm getting this lift, or do I go out to where I see the gliders circling in the thermal away from the ridge? And that was kind of like a thing that I was playing out in my head this whole time of, where do I want to be? I was getting some great lift on the ridge, but then I saw people out a little bit farther out getting good lift out there. And so it was an interesting balance to strike, and it seemed like switching back and forth was actually working pretty good. Interested to hear, you know, people's thoughts on
This is so cool.
just positioning of like where the best place could be to go. And it's just really hard to say. So there's, you know, I gotta be so vigilant. Like, you know, got this guy turning, I'm below. I have the right of way, but like still, I'm not just gonna blast right below him as he's turning. And it was kind of weird. There's a few times this happened where, you know, like people would start kind of turning the same way, but like you still end up with these weird crossings when you're like completely 180 out of phase with them, and so it gets funky. You feel like you're like on an approach, kind of like you're both going like clockwise or whatever. But if you're coming, you know, both clockwise, so like we're both going clockwise, but then like say like this guy is going a little bit slower, and then you end up like this, so they're still rotating in the same direction. God, this looks wild. But then you end up with these passes in the middle, like bam, 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 and your closing speed is fast. And so like that happened at times where there was 3 people doing that all out of phase, and like I'm sandwiched in the middle. And like that just felt wild. Like I was like, okay, there's a close pass. Okay, there's a close pass. Okay, there's a close pass. And there's this whole dynamic of like, okay, there might be somebody above or somebody below me, and I gotta make sure that they're watching out for me, hopefully. And I gotta watch out for someone below me for sure. And so it's just a lot of processing, and I'm glad of the people in the air because it's just so fun to fly with other people. It's just kind of the thing of, humans are social creatures. Like it's so fun to share this experience with other people. Like you want to do stuff with other people. Don't want to do stuff alone for the most part. So this is one of the lower points in the flight I'm at altitude wise. And there's a couple times this happens, as we can see from the chart, where I was like, am I gonna have to fly out? I don't want to fly out yet. I'm having a blast. I want to get my H3. And it's just like, I'm not like too low at any point, except for when I decided to call it, and it kind of tapered off at the end, which was fine. But you know, in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, like I gotta find a lift pocket soon, or it's not gonna work out. And that's where having the other gliders in the air is so helpful, because I can see people like, you know, 500 feet below me getting lift. So I'm like, okay, I just head over to where they're at, and I got a safe margin of air still to try to get that lift. And if I do, awesome. And if I don't, then I just fly home and land happy, and I'm good. But it's just so nice to have the other gliders trying to work and find thermals as well. And especially at lower altitudes, that's perfect, because then I have this nice like net that I can just fall over into and know that I have a really good chance of finding lift, or where I see them getting lift, which is awesome. Over here is my pumpkin. I just carved it underwater at Channel Island Scuba. Shout out to the boys. In this month's issue of the USHPA magazine, there was an article about visualizing thermals using volcano smoke, bombs, and wildfires. And so that got me really thinking about how to visualize a thermal. And as we just saw me turning around here, now I'm flying out straight. What I'm really trying to think about this whole flight, and something just in general that I'm trying to work on, is better visualizing where thermals are. I mean, they're obviously invisible to my eye on a clear day like this, but there is, you know, there's a shape here. So we got this like core coming up, and then it's, you know, shifting. It's probably not straight up, but just feeling that point of lift when I'm like, and just like we got the core swirling around, feeling that lift as I enter it. That's what I'm trying to find here when I'm doing these circles. And so we'll see at times I'm looking at other gliders, seeing them circling, and I'm locked in a circle with them, and so I'm just trying to figure out like where's the actual thermal. I'm trying to visualize that. And so like if you're watching and you're not a pilot, that's just like something I would like recommend that you try to visualize as well, watching this, because I think that's the really interesting part about this, is we're just kind of like these like weather balloons almost, like figuring out what's going on with this air. And I think that's kind of like the more intellectually stimulating portion of hang gliding for me. It's figuring out this like invisible force and wielding it, and you kind of feel like a Jedi with a wing strapped to you, because you're really harnessing like this thing that is around us and surrounds us, and you can't see it, but it's very powerful. And if you know how to use it correctly, you can become very powerful as a result, i.e. getting higher heights than other people. And so I'll see multiple people on this flight just getting way better lift than me. I'm like, okay, what are they doing better? How do I get better in that better situation? Part of it is equipment, but for getting lift, I mean, really, my glider should be almost better than a higher performance glider, because I can fly slower when I'm in the thermal, theoretically. Another thing, just generally, comfort on this flight was really nice. Like, I didn't notice my feet at all being sore. I don't know if it was because I was so focused on everything flying around me or what. I did notice the leg straps felt a little bit tight, and so I actually loosened them up a couple days after this flight, just so I was ready to go, because I've been telling myself for like 3 flights to adjust the leg loops, and I never do it. So I would recommend any people that don't have their gear quite dialed in, and if this happens to you too, don't let it happen to you.
Definitely got to go looser on the leg loops. I say it every time. Like, I'm going to do it for real though this time. Those are feeling good though. Left neck is a little sore. I think it's from lifting stuff at work mostly though. And a lot of looking around, but okay, it's kind of wild. We got like 3 separate cycles going here. Me and Mike are locked in on one, and we got 2 other gliders going the other way. It's a little funky. Cranking out some great lift though. Hell yeah.
And for this flight, I'm at H2, but in my head, I'm like, okay, I need 30 more minutes of flight time, and then I'll have my hours to qualify for H3. So I'm really pegging that as a goal this whole flight. I'm like, okay, gotta make the 30 minutes. It'd be really sweet to make it to 30 minutes. Like, what can we do to make it to 30 minutes safely? I really hope I get there. So I just did my written test like a week before this flight, or like a few days before. And I'm like, okay, I just gotta send in my logbook once I get these 30 minutes, and I got an H3. So this is actually my last flight as an H2 pilot. Sorry for the clickbaity title. I thought of it on the drive home, and I was like, it's too good.
Locked in though. Oh.
But look at this shot, man. We got 3 gliders in view in the GoPro. That's epic. Not even like super wide angle. 3 gliders just doing their thing. This was the actual like elevation high point, and honestly, I think high point emotionally for me as well, just because I knew I was getting such good lift and such a high altitude this late in the flight, you know, 40 minutes in the flight. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like, just crushing it this flight. This was so exciting, and also kind of stressful, because again, like, I am so close to these other gliders, and it's not actually that close, I don't think, like in the terms of flying with other people close. But for me, a new guy, like, this was wild, dude. Like, it's such a weird thing to get used to, being that close to other gliders, and especially this like really nice buoyant lifting air. Super wild just having that close encounter with other people, when, you know, there's like these bumps where you're just getting picked up like 50 feet out of nowhere, and then, you know, they're dropping 50 feet out of nowhere, and it's just so crazy to think about like how fast the closing speeds are on a lot of this like tight flying in these thermals. It totally blew my mind. And yeah, just watching this, I'm just getting flashbacks to this flight. It was so wild, a few of these passes, and I'll try to find them on the 360 cam, but so wild on a few of these passes Where just another glider is just like, it feels like I'm about to like freaking like bump right into him and do like a midair collision. Like, I know we're not actually that close, but it was just like, whoa, like this is wild. I cannot imagine doing a midair collision, because it would just like, the glider gets so big when it comes up and like just gets near you. It's just like, whoa, it's like in your face, like boom, like it's crazy. And like, I'm not even like that close to gliders, and it's just like, it reminds you like these things are pretty big, and like it would be wild to be just like sitting right next to one of these, like super wild. And yeah, so later in the flight here, like at this point in time, oh, close pass there, wild. Later in the flight, it's just a good feeling, because you're like, okay, like I'm staying up longer than some other pilots have, and just I'm that type of competitive person where I'm like, okay, I want to be the very best at this. Who knows if I'll be the best hang glider pilot ever? I don't think that's a goal necessarily for me, but it's just like, I'm always in a competitive mindset of like, okay, like maybe I could last a little bit longer than these guys. That'd be awesome. Like maybe I can figure out this air better than them on this particular day. And so seeing people land out and still being in the air, such a rewarding feeling. And this was just, for me, this was kind of like the first like big flight that I've had where I was like, I really felt like I was doing a decent job of staying in the air. And so that feeling, like I just really hold on to that, just being a competitive person, like in enjoying doing well at things. And so that was really exciting for me. Just being like, okay, like I'm not terrible at this, you know, I'm not like good at this at all yet. You know, I'm just getting my feet wet, really, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like I'm starting to figure a couple things out, and it's like starting to come together. And that was really awesome to just kind of see that all kind of come together on this flight, where, you know, had a decent landing, decent launch, stayed in the air for a long bit of time, and lasted longer than other pilots. Like that was a cool feeling for sure. Here we go. So I'm adjusting a little bit my hang height, and I remember like adjusting it up and just being like, whoa, dude, like what is going on? Like my arms feel like they're so far, like my body is like stretched out. I'm so far away from the tube. And in hindsight, it's like I probably was like back where I was with the stirrup harness when I first started learning, but it's so wild doing that adjustment. And I was just trying to get a little bit better angle because my neck on the right side was getting so sore from all the looking around, and just the length of this flight as well. I was like, okay, if I go for a little bit higher angle here, and that'll be better. I was thinking for a while that I needed to shorten my hang loop, but just looking at the video now and kind of thinking about it, I think maybe just going for a less aggressive angle might be the play, because I think overall I have a pretty good hang loop height, but just maybe going a little bit less on the angle. Like I'm not doing a cross country like competition here. Like I don't need like that perfect like horizontal angle. I can go up a little bit, still have good control, and just so much easier on the neck, like so much less strain. And so I was glad I tilted that up a little bit. I ended up lowering it down a little bit just because I felt like so high up, but I think it was fine. Like I felt unsafe for some reason, which is weird. I think just like less control, because you definitely have more control, I think, lower to the bar kind of, just because you got that better displacement. But I think getting that slightly higher angle and a little bit more separation worked out really well for me, just because it's so much less neck straining. It felt a lot nicer. Getting water on this flight felt a lot more natural, so that was good. It's just a couple things. For repetition is key, and feeling like they're getting dialed in is really nice feeling, because, you know, it's a struggle, man, sometimes figuring out how to do all this stuff for the first time, and just getting that repetition and like getting used to it is nice in a lot of ways. And then also in a lot of ways it's like, oh, I kind of miss like the novelty of it. Like I still think about that first flight off the mountain solo, and I don't have a video of it. I wish I did, but also at the same time it's kind of almost better to like picture it, because I'm sure in my imagination it's even better than it actually was. But it was amazing. It's just like the sunset, everything was green, the air was perfectly smooth because it was so close to sunset, so there's no thermal activity. And I just remember being so like jubilant the whole time. And almost it's like chasing the dragon, like you're trying to get back to that feeling in a lot of ways. And there's like, it's nice to get better and more comfortable in the air, but then also you kind of lose a lot of that novelty, to be totally honest. And so that's why I'm excited for like new flying sites. Like getting out to Bates was awesome, and even coming back here and just getting a little bit more comfortable. But getting that new launch site even from the saddle was like, oh, like this is cool, this is a new experience again. And new experiences are awesome. I definitely chase that because it's such a cool feeling doing something different for the first time. So giving the old hands a little break there. I was like, relax. Feel myself start turning. Gotta grab the bar. But yeah, shoulders were getting a little bit sore on this flight just because it is a long one. And so I'm doing a lot of checks here now, just looking at my phone at the altitude because, as we can see, I'm starting to fall out. And I know this too. I'm at the bottom of the ridge right now. I'm over by this like giant like wash thing down to like the gravel mine or whatever it's called. By the trailhead sign that we like to see as usual. And it's just, I'm really starting to like feel like, okay, I'm getting lower. It's probably time to start cruising out. Like, let's get out of here. I'll give you the number now, but I made it over an hour on this flight. It was like 61 minutes in my recording app, and so very stoked on that. Actually, I accidentally locked my phone and kind of discovered that the live activity on the lock screen I think is even better because it just shows flight time and altitude, and it still does the beeping. And so that was dialed in. My varimeter I like had on for a little bit, but then turned off. I don't know. I think I should probably just buy like an actual hang gliding varimeter that has a display and a thing. I tried going the kind of side route, doing the blue fly, but it's just been a little bit funky getting it to work, to be totally honest, unfortunately. I think partly, I mean, definitely operator error, but it's like, it's harder to know if it's on because there's no display. And it's not that loud, but what I have is working. It's just been a little bit higher effort than I would like to get everything going.
Woohoo!
So on the cruise out here, I really try to do like some nice like stall practice as well as a little bit of pulling in. Just in general, trying to get a little bit more comfortable doing acrobatic type moves. Just situations that I could end up in if I'm tossed out of a thermal, as well as just getting a feel for the limits of the glider and how to recover from those positions, because it's good practice to have.
This thing's like impossible to stall, bro. What a great day. What a great day. Hell yeah.
Over here is my pumpkin. I just carved it underwater. And stick around to the end if you want to see a close-up of the carving. Here we have a really nice view of the landing zone at Sylmar here. And it's just really cool to see all these gliders on the ground. And for me, just being in the air still, from a perspective of, we launched at about the same time, and I'm coming in like towards the end. For me, like that's a huge point of pride and just kind of reassurance that like, okay, conditions equal, gliders relatively equal. I'm doing as good as all these other pilots. I'm not the first one to land. I'm not the last one to land, but I'm holding my own with these experienced pilots, and that's a good, reassuring feeling for me to have. What I'm doing here is I'm looking to my right, over my right shoulder there, and I'm just gauging how high am I above the landing zone. So I'm about 300 feet above the landing zone. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this one last turn. I feel like I'm in about the point to start doing my downwind legs. So I start doing that, kind of put down the flaps as in the legs, get a little bit slower, start creating some drag, and then pull in, just bleed off energy. And this is kind of me being a Parma trained pilot. I like these fast approaches. So coming in near max speed of the glider. Massive shout out to the person who got the video of the landing. Love to see that. Coming in here on final approach, I'm just trying to line up the dots, figure out where I want to start to do my round out. Start to slow down, bring those hands up nice and controlled. Rounding out. Again, I did that thing where I kind of like did a little mini flare, and then I was like, I'm way too high, and then pulled back in and did another flare. In hindsight, I probably should have rounded out a little bit longer, just let that glider cruise at trim speed, and then do my flare. But it's a little bit of it's a balance, and there's like lift at the ground, and then there's like ground effect, and then there's some headwind making some different conditions. So it's hard to get dialed in, but I was happy with this overall. Didn't have to run it out or anything. I think I held a good strong flare, and so super great flight. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Halloween. If I get this posted in time, I don't think I will. But happy Halloween. Here's my octopus pumpkin. I'll bring him out to let everyone see. But thanks so much for watching. Enjoy. See you guys around.